I want to bring in a Fox Business exclusive, former National Security Advisor to Vice President Dick Cheney and Senior Fellow at the Jewish Institute for National Security of America, John Hanna. And, John, I want to pivot back with you, if you don't mind, here to this attack at the synagogue this morning. The holiest day of the year. And obviously it was a targeted attack with the assailant, the deceased, and likely two accomplices. There has been a horrific rise in England, of these attacks on people of the Jewish faith. It's getting worse, not better. What do you make of all of this?
Yeah, it's absolutely horrific. As you say, it's emblematic of a serious problem, not only in England, but growing worldwide, clearly, and in Europe in particular. We still have a lot to find out about the identity of the perpetrators of the attack, but obviously an attack on Jews for being Jews who probably had very little connection to anything going on in Israel or Gaza, but simply attacked and for being people of the Jewish faith. So it's a serious problem. Of course, Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of England, thought he would buy himself a little bit of domestic quiet probably by recognizing a Palestinian state just a few weeks ago, but obviously not. There's a serious problem in England.
Well, and, just to give you a number here, there's been more than 1,500 incidents in the first half of the year, attacks on people of the Jewish faith. That is their second highest reported since a record was set a year earlier. So this is not going away. But you mentioned the call for a Palestinian state. We've now got 10 EU countries that are calling for a Palestinian state. And then you add on top of that England, which we're talking about right now, also calling for a Palestinian state. If you're the Trump administration and you're, from an American perspective, how much weight does that hold in how you negotiate and handle potentially a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, and also to making sure that we support our ally, which is Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu?
Yeah, I think the president is right. You've got to, criticize those recognitions because they don't do anything to assist the peace process, and then you've just got to push them to the side. And I think this plan that the president has put on the table to try and end this war and get to a better day after in Gaza that really does eliminate and marginalize Hamas, that's where the action is now. And hopefully you can get all of our European partners to finally get behind a serious plan to actually end this war and bring the suffering to a conclusion.
Well, John, you mentioned that 20-point plan, but I think my question is, what's the red line? What exactly is that? Because when you say a red line, I can't see Hamas caring about any red line. This war has been going on for October 7th. We're coming up on the anniversary, right? Here we go again with empty promises from Hamas. And if you listened, especially with Benjamin Netanyahu at the United Nations, he made it very clear that they lie repeatedly. And then they also, they're still holding hostages, both dead and alive. So I'm not sure what a red line is at this point.
I think the red line is what the president said to the prime minister. If Hamas loses this final opportunity to get a chance to end this war, and for a few of them that are left living, for those Hamas members to maybe get out with their lives, they've got to accept this. Otherwise, the United States is going to go full frontal behind Israel, legitimizing Israel finishing this job, as Prime Minister Netanyahu said, the hard way, militarily. And I think it'll expose to the rest of the world that has kind of been in a state of disbelief, that trying to blame and pressure Israel, that at the end of the day, the only culprit here for continuing this war, for continuing this suffering, is a Hamas terrorist organization that refuses to let out these innocent hostages that they've held for almost 2 years, and refuses to disarm and surrender.
Yeah, and they're using their own people as shields in all of that. Let's switch to the Ukraine-Russia war, because, we've seen, obviously, more of a pivot now from the administration and from President Trump to defend President Zelensky and Ukraine, whether that is intelligence sharing, which we now have, that discussion is on the table, or whether it's military support or financial support. All of those things have been in play during this entire war. But, Vladimir Putin is making these comments even today, and it's very fiery rhetoric. He's talking about nuclear testing. He's talking about energy. One of the things President Trump has made very clear is that the Europeans need to quit buying Russian energy. And now you've got these inflammatory comments again coming out today from Vladimir Putin that are almost threatening.
Yeah, well, this is standard order Putin. I mean, he's been doing this since the war started several years ago. I think the president, is unbelievably frustrated that he hasn't been able to use his relationship with Putin to leverage an end to this war. And I think he's seeing some intelligence that, in fact, the Russian army is in dire straits. The Russian economy is increasingly suffering severe problems and shortages. So I think the president feels like there's a chance now to put increased pressure on Putin. I hope he does that through this intelligence sharing. There's thoughts that he'll sell the Ukrainians now again some long-range missiles to go deep inside of Russia. And I hope he gets after this oil question in particular, not only with the European allies who are buying it at a fairly steep discount, but the main culprit here, everybody knows, are the Chinese and the Indians. And the president really, if he's serious about bringing pressure on Putin, needs to go after those Chinese purchases of Russian oil.
Well, we've still got a trade negotiation underway with the Chinese. We're expecting some news from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, any day now to give us more clarity on that. Before you go, I do want to ask you about this because basically, the European Union seems to be mulling, or they are mulling, taking $600 billion in frozen Russian assets, which right now are sitting in Brussels, and using that and loaning that money to Ukraine. That would be a very, I'm assuming, inflammatory thing to do to Vladimir Putin. It would anger him, I'm sure. Is that legal, though? I'm not an international lawyer, John, but is something like that possible, to take that money?
I think it probably is possible that a good lawyer would find a way to ensure it's legal under international law. I think it's obviously a matter in dispute, but it's a big card that the Europeans, that the West have to play against Putin that would be enormously helpful to Ukraine. And it's unclear what Putin could do about it other than to escalate all the kinds of shadow war tactics that he's already using. Listen, he's sending drones into European countries right now, testing NATO's responses. I think we've got to be equal to that in terms of our steeliness and willingness to really push back and punch him in the nose where it hurts.
Well, I've seen these reports now about, the Europeans putting up these drone walls because they're worried about Vladimir Putin infringing on, and he has into their airspace, but that could escalate. John Hanna, thank you so much for being here. Your expertise is very valuable on this topic.
Great to be with you. Thank you.